Life Upgrade Podcast.
Happy because we're talking about addiction. It's something many people do not really want to talk about. And I believe those who will be listening to this podcast will find it really helpful. I've talked about addiction before in my podcast, but I believe that you will be talking about it from a different perspective that will really help people out there. So, everyone, welcome to the Life Upgrade Podcast. I'm having a special guest in the house. His name is Joshua Shaw. And today we're talking about Untangled, breaking free from addiction. And he'll be sharing his personal story with us, helping elevate our life so that we'll be able to live the life we want to live without anything holding us back. So, Joshua Shaw, I would just love you to introduce yourself to the audience and tell them what you're going to be teaching today that will help them in their personal journey.
My name is Joshua Shaw. I'm an author. I've spent most of my life in addiction, and recently I broke free from it over about a year ago. And so I feel like in my writing, I try to help other people who might feel alone in their addiction, let them know that they aren't alone and that a lot of us are struggling with the same things.
All right. Okay. That's great. So we're talking about Untangled, breaking free from addiction. In the modern age, the modern era, people are dealing with a whole lot of addiction, even if they don't admit that they are. So I want you to tell me the negative impact you've noticed over the years through your work, how addiction is really affecting the lives of people negatively, and in their personal life and their personal journey.
Well, I struggle with addiction. I feel like addiction covers any class, any member of society, whether you're rich or you're poor. I feel like addiction can hit all classes there, and it affects people differently. When people have more money, they can get farther in their addiction, but and then when people don't have money, I think addiction causes crime, a lot more crime to happen. For me personally, I got addicted to like pain medication back in like 2008, 2009. Here in America, the doctors were handing out pain medication to everyone, and I had hurt my back. And so that's how I originally got addicted. I got addicted from medical professionals. They just gave the substances out to me, and then eventually every day. And when I didn't have it anymore, then all of a sudden I went to crime. I went to the streets. We started getting drugs from the cartels, and that was my introduction into addiction was through doctors, and then they cut me off and I had to go to the streets. But I feel like people struggle. One thing people don't talk about is like food addiction and sex addiction, but my addiction was with actual drugs.
All right. So from what you said it's very easy for people to get addicted to stuff like medication. And at the end of the day, we have an increase in crime rates, and we see people wasting their life doing the things they were not supposed to do. And they kind of end up in a very bad spot in life. And I know that's have been your experience, what you've observed over the years. But what I really think is the worst part about addiction is that many are struggling with it and they don't know where to find help. So I don't know if you have in your journey or an experience, you've been in a spot or in a place where you found it was very difficult for you to get help, to speak to someone that could assist you, and what you did in that situation or at that point in your life.
Yeah, so when I was in my cycle of addiction, I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody about it. I felt like nobody would understand me. And eventually what happened to me was because I isolated myself from all my friends. I know that there's support groups out there, but it's very hard to bring yourself to an NA or AA meeting because first of all, you kind of think you don't have a problem, although you know you have a problem. what eventually did it for me was I ended up overdosing next to the train tracks in Chicago. I live in Chicago, and I basically died. I was lucky somebody called the paramedics, and I went into a coma. I fell and I hit my head, and but that's how that's how addiction ended for me. It ended with me almost dying, and that was my wake up call. I think with most people that are in their cycle of addiction, they cut off all their friends. They don't have any communications with people, and I think they don't want other people to know, because it's kind of embarrassing to admit that you're being controlled by this other substance. So they cut off their friends. They feel isolated from people. But that cycle only ends when you have enough pain. When your life is messed up that much, that at the end of the road, there's only pain with addiction. And I think that's when people get clean, is when they've had enough pain. Like me, I died. I went into a coma because I hit my head on the concrete, and I blacked out for 3 months. And I woke up. Nobody knew where I was. My family didn't know where I was. Nobody knew where to find me. The police were looking for me. I was a missing person, and I was in a hospital bed in Chicago. And that's how my cycle of addiction ended, because I almost died. But I think for most people, if they don't decide to go get help, then that's where it's going to end. People only stop to get help when they've had enough pain in their life, when they can't take it anymore, or they're going to run until they're dead. That's the only other option there is jail, when they get locked up for committing crimes to support their addiction. I think that's the only other option. When people say you're going to end up dead or in jail, those are the only two options for somebody who's addicted, at least for illegal substances. I think with sex addiction and food addiction, you can still end up in the hospital with both of those. But for me, it's when you've had enough pain in your life. I think that's when the cycle of addiction will end.
All right. That's really sad. What you said last touched me. You said the end point for every addiction is either death or in jail. That's really sad. And many people are already heading towards that direction, and they don't know what to do. So when I was preparing for this episode, the policy said that your faith, your trust in God helped you along the journey. So I would really love you to expand on that, because many people do not really understand the importance of having a divine authority over your life, especially when you are going through a season like this. So I would just love you to expand on that. Sure.
So I grew up in a religious family, but in my 20s and 30s and during my addiction, I was not spiritual. I knew maybe God existed, but he was not in my life. He wasn't working in my life. I was doing very bad things. And I didn't put my faith in him. He was not part of he was looking out for me, but I didn't put my faith in him. I didn't pray, and I didn't do any of the spiritual things that I do today. So when he saved me, because that's the only, I should be dead. So when I woke up in that hospital room, it was and nobody knew where I was. My family didn't know. It was very lonely. It was a very lonely time. And I had to learn how to talk. I had to learn to walk again, because I had a traumatic brain injury. And so I had a lot of time to sit there and reconnect with my higher power. I believe in God. I'm a Christian, but I feel like whatever religion it is, if you turn your will over to your higher power, whatever you believe in, I believe we kind of all believe in the same thing. But that's what did it for me. I realized God saved me for a reason, and I realized I wasn't living my life. I think he gives all of us talents to use, and whether we choose or not to use them, is on us. And so I just really kind of turned my life over to him. And like, if we go into NA meetings or AA meetings, they always say we gotta turn our life over to our higher power. And sometimes we hear it so much that we just like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, turn it, but we don't really actually practice it and do it. But that's what did it for me, and that's what keeping me successful and doing the things that I'm doing now is I've taken that step. I know that God saved me for a reason, And so I owe it to him to live my life every day like he did a favor for me. So I believe you have to turn your life over to a higher power in order to stay righteous.
So I get it that God saw you through the journey where you were struggling, and when you were finding it very difficult to move past that point, your belief, your faith is one of the things that help you. So is it possible for people who do not believe in God or in any divine authority over their life to be helped?
Well, I feel like I feel well. So if you go to NA and AA meetings, they plan on this, right? They plan for the people that are atheists. They say that you have to just pick something to be your higher power. I've heard in meetings that they say it doesn't matter if you believe in God, you just have to have something that you think is bigger than yourself or higher than yourself. I've heard one guy leading the meeting say it could be a doorknob, and I don't know if I really agree with all of that. But in the NA and AA meetings, they say you just have to find something that you think is higher than you, a higher power than yourself to depend on. I don't personally believe that works. I think that, I think when you go through the cycle of addiction long enough, I think at the end of it, if you're going to get clean, you're going to end up believing in God. And not maybe because of seeing God, but I think you see the evils. I think, me personally, I started believing in God. Remember, you saved my life, but I started believing that the devil was real when I saw all the evil in the world from the lifestyle I was kind of living. Not necessarily I was taking place in it, but when you're out there buying drugs on the street, you see a lot of evil. And so I believed if the devil was real, then God has to be real too. And then God saved my life, and he but a part of it is accepting him. Even if you don't believe, I think you could just say a prayer like, God, I don't know if you're real, but maybe could you work in my life? Could you show me a sign? Could you show me something? And I think once you invite that in, I think that God will start working. He say all you have to do is knock on the door and ask and you will receive. So if you ask to see, if you're an atheist, you're struggling with it right now, I think you could just ask for a sign that God's real, and he will come show you. That's what I personally believe.
Okay, that's beautiful. I love the answer you gave. Okay, so quickly, I know when you were going through this process, you had other help and other resources. So I would quickly love you to just give to people how they can get help. Someone who is dealing or struggling with a certain addiction, drug addiction, or any kind of addiction, what can they do? What can they begin to do to break out from that particular problem they are dealing with?
For me, that back in 2008, the medical community got us all hooked on drugs. So the medical community now looks at opiate addiction as an actual disease. So if the main thing that keeps people from getting clean is having to go through withdrawals, and there's medication now. They have Suboxone. If you are an opiate addict, heroin addict, fentanyl, anything like that, and you want to get clean, you can go to your local hospital, you can go to the emergency room, and you say, hey, I'm a drug addict, I want to get clean, and they will prescribe you medication, and then they will get you into a clinic where you can withdraw from. So that's the first step, is you have to decide that you want help. And then the medical community, the nurses and everybody, the doctors, very nice. They treated me like a human being. They didn't treat me like a drug addict. So that's your first stop, is to go to the hospital. In America, I don't know how they do it in different parts of the world, but in America, you can go to the emergency room and ask for help. Say that, hi, I'm addicted, I'm going to go through withdrawals, and they will prescribe you right there, and they will send you to a clinic. And then I think the next thing you really got to do is you got to change the people in your life. You've got to get rid of the people that use. If you want to get clean, you got to go on that journey yourself. You kind of have to isolate. You can't get clean. You can't get clean and then still be around people that are doing drugs. So I think that's the first step, is going to a hospital and say, hey, I need help for this. And then, of course, there's 12-step meetings. There's AA and NA. And then there's Christian based group called Celebrate Recovery, and they go every Friday night. And so you can find that. You can go online and search for a local Celebrate Recovery group in your area. But those are the first things that I would do and that I did.
Okay, that's beautiful. If I get you correctly, you said you have to go to the hospital. They should recommend some sort of program for you. Then try to change your circle, the people you hang out with. Then, if you can, join a community that will help you to grow. So, are there other resources like books you can recommend?
So I'm an author. I write, but my writing, I wouldn't say it's a resource, but I wrote a book called My Own Ghost. And what I do, I write.
Okay, guys, that was a wonderful session with Joshua Shaw. Unfortunately, we are unable to complete this session because at the time of recording this podcast, we are having serious internet issues in my country. But if you want to get more information about the book he was trying to talk about, My Own Ghost, just use the link in the description. If you want to get in touch with Joshua Shaw, there's also some links you can click in the description of this podcast, and you will be able to get in touch with him. Addiction is something that we should take seriously. I believe it's affecting the life of millions of people. And if you need help, you're on the right place. Please, if you enjoy this episode or you believe this episode will help someone out there, I would love you to share this podcast. So, till next time, stay blessed, stay empowered, and stay upgraded.